So last time we were here, we talked
Yes,
about object use, and it was a very important point that the child learns then when the object is not in the perceptual field, it does not mean it is destroyed. The idea of object constancy comes into picture. Idea that even when something is not in our perceptual field, even then it exists, and the object survives the destruction. Although the child feels out of sight, out of existence, the object actually survives. So the child realizes over a period of time that the object is surviving the destruction, and the external reality is different from his internal reality. In the internal reality, out of the perceptual field, objects don't exist. But in the external reality, they exist. And this differentiation between the inner world and the outer world, that they operate independent of each other, this slowly sets in. So the recognition of external reality sets in. Idea of object permanence beyond being in our perceptual field sets in. And the independence of the objects from our mind, that sets in. That the object has existence, survival, autonomy, and desire of its own apart from what is in my mind. It is also called the theory of mind, that we come to realize that just as we have a mind, others also have a mind distinct from our own. That everyone has a mind distinct from each other. And
sir,
this,
sorry, you
okay,
said object has existence, survival, autonomy,
and desire
and desire.
of its own, independent of us.
Yes, sir.
So that is what makes the object apart from us, that it has existence, autonomy, and desire. And if it does not have desire independent of us, autonomy independent of us, only existence, then it becomes a self-object relationship. That the object is actually only a half object. It is half autonomous, but it is almost like an extension of us, which is what a narcissist dependent relationship is all about, or a sadist masochist relationship is all about. That there are two people, but one person does not exercise his desire, but acts according to the desire of the other. So he has existence, but not autonomy and desire. So in a way, he is a half object. And Kohut calls this kind of relationship self-object relationships. And he writes it in a way, self-object. The two are not written separately. It is not self-object. Self-object, meaning the object is not actually an autonomous object. It exists autonomously, exists separately, sorry, but it's almost like an extension of the dominant person. So here we are talking about a completely autonomous object, not the self-object. So Winnicott says this is the basis of mature relationships. That we accept that somebody has existence, autonomy, and desire of its own, and it is not an extension of us. It's not easy, it's very difficult. We always want to break down the autonomy and desire of the other and make that person an extension of us. So slavery is very natural, psychologically speaking. That most men in the world desire slavery in psychological terms, though in legal and political terms, they will say no, slavery should not be there. So everyone has come to a stage of evolution where political and legal slavery we abhor, but we are still far from distancing ourselves from psychological slavery. We still want secretly a psychological slavery. So we actually don't want a subject-object relationship. We actually want a self-object relationship. Next concepts, the holding environment. So Winnicott was the first to bring about the idea of holding. And this is a very important Winnicottian idea which has permeated therapy of most of the schools today. So Winnicott says, in early life, we should get good physical holding, that somebody holds us physically. And the way the person holds us and relates to us, it gives us an idea that we are consolidated one and not fragmented as it seems psychologically to us. Because we must remember, in early life, there is a physical consolidation, but a psychological anarchy. There is a psychological disintegration, and slowly the mind is trying to consolidate that fragmented self. So the physical holding is very necessary. The touch, the smell, the warmth that comes from physical holding, the safety, the not being abandoned. Some powerful people being interested in us and wanting us to survive and thrive. So physical holding is the first part of the holding environment. That somebody holds us well, not in a way that causes us pain or discomfort, or which makes our head tilt one side, because the neck at that time is very, very fragile. So somebody holds us physically well, gives us a signal of somebody caring and somebody safe. The holding also provides a kind of an anchor that we are one consolidated whole and not fragmented as we feel inside. Because it's a kind of a dichotomy that everyone relates to us as though we are one consolidated package. When we look into the eyes or mirror, we find ourselves to be one, but inside we feel ourselves fragmented. So the body is one, but the mind is fragmented. Second is emotional holding. That whatever emotional outbursts we do, somebody has the capacity to contain it and hold it. And they don't do a penny for a penny kind of transaction. That you scream at me, I scream at you. And many mothers do it. They are not able to hold it. So when the child screams, the mother also screams. Or somebody in the family screams. So, which means that the environment does not have holding capacity. They can't hold difficult emotions. They want everything peaceful, everything to their convenience. And this is very important in therapy also. That in therapy, we do a lot of emotional holding. We don't pay back in the same coin. Many times you allow the patient to score points and get away with it. Although we could settle it, we know the arguments, but we don't settle it. Because many of the situations are well rehearsed situations. They occurred many times. So we know the statements to use, but we hold back. Carl Jung says, allow the patient to score points of you if he wants it. At some point, you can tell him after a few sessions, you can score as many points as you want. I don't have any problem, but it will not heal you. But initially, we let it go. So there is physical holding, there is emotional holding. And there is a psychological containment that the child screams and cries and the mother takes it in, processes it and gives back the smile. Right? So you take in difficult emotions, but you give out good emotions. And this is very important in dealing with projective identification, especially in psychotic patients or personality disorders, that they will put so difficult emotions in you that you will be compelled to act out unless you are trained into it. Because if they have got angry parents all throughout life, they will make you angry and recreate the situation. And often they will make you abandon them, and then they will conclude everyone will abandon me. And they will continue in that abandonment situation. Because this is what I call the tragic holding space. That in one hand it's tragic, but in second hand, they have survived in that state for many years. So they feel they will survive equally long. So it's a tragic holding state. And many people feel it fearful to heal themselves and get out of this tragic holding state. Because the new state of health is an unknown and they feel extreme anxiety about the new state. It's the fear of health, which is a very strange fear. That on one hand, they give money and come to be healthy. On the second hand, they feel fear of health. It's an unknown. So the psychological containment is very necessary. And then we have reliability and continuity. This is very, very important. Unpredictability and discontinuity are something that the child can least handle. A predictable attack is far better than an unpredictable attack. And unpredictability of attack is at the root of many times of bipolar and borderline. That if we examine the family history, in most cases of bipolar and borderline, we have at least one parent who is unpredictable, unregulated, and attacking. You will rarely find somebody with bipolar or borderline who does not have an unpredictable attacking parent. So reliability and continuity. And Winnicott gives a new name to continuity. He says, going on being.
Going on being.
Being. That you exist and you allow time to pass. You are lost and happy in your own pursuits. And you don't feel anybody is going to intrude, which happens in our offices also. That we are lost pleasantly into something and somebody intrudes and breaks that pleasant preoccupation in something very productive. That we were doing something very productive. We were deep into it. We are very creative and productive and very happy about what we were doing. And then somebody opens the door and intrudes and breaks that state. And then again we go and we are on the surface of the issue, not in the depth that we were. And too many intrusions will irritate us. If too many times your door is opened by somebody, after some time you will feel irritated. So this intrusion into going on being is very necessary. Sorry, is very difficult. We should not have intrusion in going on being. At the same time, we should not abandon. So the child wants a mother who is around, but who does not intrude. So neither abandonment nor intrusion, the golden mean in between is going on being. That you feel secure enough to be lost in your pursuit without facing abandonment or intrusion. And this is very difficult in India because our culture does not allow us not to intrude. We can't be silent with anybody. We are supposed to speak. So it's very difficult for us to allow somebody be lost in his thoughts or be in a state of reverie or imagination. And the only way out is to shut your room if you want to do serious thinking. You can't be with somebody and do serious thinking. So this is reliability and continuity. This is the holding environment. In therapy also we hold the patient, and one of the things that Winnicott does, and Kohut does it probably even more, is to delay interpretations. That is one meaning of holding in therapy, that we hold back our interpretations, that we provide holding to the person by not interpreting, which is in a way opposite to classical psychoanalysis. Next important concept is the concept of integration. Each thinker uses words in very different ways. Like when we talk of Jung, he uses the word integration in a very different way. For him, integration is integration between self and the ego, between complementing archetypes, between the unconscious and the conscious, between the persona and the self, between the persona and the shadow, between any two opposites, between yin and yang. That was integration that he talked about in a very macro way. Kohut's use of the word integration is very micro. So he says that in the initial period, when we feel fragmented inside, the psyche has to collect all these sensations together and create one whole consolidated psyche. And that is what he calls by integration. That there are fragmented sensations all over the body. There are different parts where different parts of the psyche where different fantasies are going on. Different feelings are going on. And we have to bring that anarchy into a government control, the government of the ego. And this is what he means by integration. Bringing that psychological anarchy under the government of the ego. And this is how slowly we start feeling one, that we are not fragments, but we are one consolidated whole, psychologically speaking. So this is what he calls by integration. That the ego is consolidated. First of all, the ego is consolidated, and then ego consolidates the rest of the psyche. And second is psychosomatic unity. We start feeling that there is integration between our mind and the body. They are not two different things. That when my mind gives an order, my hand moves. When my hand feels pain, suddenly I feel it in the brain. So they are one system. They are not two different things. Because initially there is a doubt. Okay, this hand, this mind, these eyes, are they all different or are they one? And slowly the oneness comes.
There was also a concept of body ego in classical psychoanalysis.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And how is it different from this psychosomatic unity?
It is the same. The body ego coordinates the psychosomatic unity. Because psychoanalysis has seen enormous debate on the word ego and the word self. Like in case of ego, we can see one operation of the ego, which is coordination between the unconscious and the conscious, or between the superego. That is one. Second is between inside and outside, the environmental adaptation. So one way to look at it is we can distinguish, let us say we differentiate into two. We call one part of the ego as the social ego, and one part of the ego as a system ego. So the system ego will be responsible then for psychosomatic unity. and also coordination between the id and the superego. So this is one safe way to define the ego in terms of the social ego and in terms of the system ego. But Freud normally uses the word single ego. He does not use these two words. I have put these two words. He uses the word system ego, but not the word social ego. But my feeling is if you use it this way, so the self of the Kohut is very close to the social ego. So in fact, we can, if we use this definition, then we can differentiate Kohut self also into the social self and the system self, and the two then become very synonymous. And so this is where the eco-integration for Winnicott says the whole fragmentation first has this point of I. So something coordinates into an I, the ego integrates. And then the psychosomatic unity is slowly established. And we then feel we are one cohesive self, one body mind, one system.
So you said ISLE?
No, I and not I. So Mahler uses the word I and not I, but Winnicott does not go into I and not I. He is only talking about I. He's not talking about not I. So he says that I consolidates. So first the ego consolidates, psychosomatic unity is brought in by the ego, and we start feeling ourselves as one cohesive system. So there is no fragmentation in the psyche, no fragmentation between the body and the psyche. We appear as one system. So a cohesive self is established. And then this cohesive self faces emotional turbulence. And slowly emotional stability is established if the environment is good. Because Winnicott is completely an environmental person, not a constitutionalist.
Is it somewhat similar in what is described in the novel called Sibyl by Schreiber, where there are multiple personalities? The girl dissociates into 16 personalities. SYBIL,
So,
Flora Rita Schreiber.
yeah. So what he is talking is at a very micro level before personalities can be integrated. Like if we look at multiple identity, there are many people in one person because of disassociation. So there are many people. Now here, even the first person is not yet formed. So we are talking about the first person, how he is formed. Now after that, whether the first person remains one person or he becomes many persons, that will come later. But we are talking about a completely anarchic situation where there is no person and the first person is being created. And in most people, the one person will remain one person. Only a few will develop multiple personality who will have many people, where the one will vertically divide into many. But for most, it will not happen. It will just be the one person. But this is the pre-first person formation period. That there is complete anarchy of sensations, ideas, fantasies, and we don't know whether we are one or there is just a mass of fragmented events happening in the body. So
I find it somewhat similar to primordial ego being formed by
correct.
in the as described in psychoanalysis, and then superego, imagos.
It's a good way of describing it. That first, the system ego, which is the primordial
Yes.
ego, which emerges, and slowly social ego layers are added on. So it becomes more and more because first it is only intrapsychic and then it becomes interpersonal. So as it becomes interpersonal, all the social things get added. So initially it is intrapsychic and then it is interpersonal.
Yes.
When it's only intrapsychic, it is the proto-ego or primordial ego or the system ego. It is very interesting the way the ego develops, because that will be the root of how ego strength develops. And this is very important because ego strength is a very important variable in pathology. That in one way to look at pathology is to look at a struggle or combat between ego strength and the trauma in the unconscious. Is one way to conceptualize pathology. That there is a trauma in the unconscious and there is an ego trying to control, regulate, sublimate, and manage that trauma. And it's only when the ego will partially or fully fail that we will develop symptoms. So just before the symptoms develop, the struggle between the ego and the traumatic material is going on. It's only when the ego loses that the first symptom appears. And ego will lose if the ego strength is lower compared to the trauma strength. So ego strength is very important, and at the root of ego strength is how the ego gets created in the first place. What is the manufacturing process of that ego? What are the raw materials which come in, which are then put together by nuts and bolts? And what are those nuts and bolts? So at present, we are far away from an empirical description of these things. We are only metaphorical. But metaphorically, what we know is this, that from a primordial soup of sensations without a center, slowly a center develops, and the center is first intrapsychic and then it becomes interpersonal. And different people have different strengths, both in terms of systems ego and in terms of interpersonal ego. And this is something very interesting to me, because like, what is the manufacturing process of this entity? And one way to look at it is to look at it from epistemological point of view. And second is to look at it from a strength point of view, which we will talk if we get time when I introduce my own heat model, because I have introduced there a new variable called affinity, which is very close to what we call karma, but it is slightly different. So let me conceptualize this in two metaphorical ways.
Yes.
The formation of ego. One metaphorical way is that from this primordial soup, a nucleus emerges. And that nucleus slowly grows to become systems ego, and then grows further to become a social ego plus systems ego, the total ego. So one metaphorical way to visualize this is that you have one sphere emerging out of the primordial soup, and the sphere grows in its size to become the full system ego. So one nucleus enlarging slowly in the process of development to become the ego. One metaphorical way to look at it. Second metaphorical way is it is not one nucleus which slowly develops. There are parts which come together and fuse like a jigsaw puzzle. That there is one part coming from X direction, second part from Y direction, and all of these come together and they join to make the ego. Now, if you use this metaphor, then the strength of the ego will be determined by the strength of the joint at the boundaries.
So please say again.
So one way to metaphorically understand this formation is that, let us say there is a primordial soup and one sphere emerges out of it. And the sphere develops to become a bigger sphere.
That is understood.
Second way to metaphorically look at it, that in this primordial soup, one component arises here, second component arises there, third component here, fourth component here, and they come together to join to become a sphere. So four quarter spheres join to become one sphere. They can be irregular shapes also, but I'm simplifying it. That four components who have emerged at different places, they join together to become the psyche, the ego. Now, what will happen is here when we talk of ego strength, the critical aspect of ego strength will be how strong are they joining at the boundaries, these constituent elements. Because as we say, any system breaks at the joints. So when you apply pressure on the ego, which is stress coming from inside or outside, the crack in the ego can come from two ways. Either it can be from surface to inside, or it can be inside somewhere, and that will be the place where two parts join to form the ego, which means the strength of the joints will become the strength of the ego. And the first crack will emerge there. So these are two alternative ways of conceptualizing the ego formation. So the difference will be why I have invented these two metaphorical approaches. There are two kind of attacks that we see, responses that we see in face of attack. There is one group of people where the fear of attack will be very high, but they will not somatize things. They will be very fearful people, but they will not somatize. The other group will be somatization will be very high. So the somatization generally will be very high. One metaphorical explanation will be when we have an ego which is created out of those assembly, or if it's one ego, then the crack starts from inside. Somehow there are hollow parts inside. And then the somatization is more likely. Compared to an ego which is chipping away from the surface, where the somatization is less likely. So we see different people with different types, and it appears to me that the chances of the ego getting manufactured by pieces coming together, they are slightly more than one sphere developing into. But we have to think more about it, but these two models can be good starting points. Next concept, realization. So first is integration. I develop a consolidated whole of myself. Second is realization. Recognition of an external reality which is outside of my subjectivity. Because initially, the child lives in his own subjective universe. He feels that is all there is. He can't think of a world outside of his house or outside of his city or even outside of him. But as adults, we realize that there are two worlds, a subjective world that each of us carries and an objective world out there which will exist even if none of us exists. So even if none of us exist, there still will be an objective world out there. And we recognize this external reality, independent of us. So the realization idea is to recognize that there is an external reality, independent of our subjectivity, independent of our existence. And then comes a clear differentiation between self and the object. This realization leads to reality testing, that there is a world out there, independent of me, out of my control, and I have to adjust to it. I may not like it that way, but if that is so, it's a given It's imposed upon me and I have to accept it. I may not like it. I may like the objective world to be just my subjective world. That is our desire. But we don't find our desire satisfied in reality. That we have to accept that there is a real world out there imposed upon us, which we have not created. And it's beyond our control to change. And to a great degree, we have to accept it. And this lays the foundation of reality testing. That I accept my limitations. I accept the objectivity, the power, and the reality of the external world. And I accept the struggle of a small me in front of a big world. And I accept the frustration this brings. It is reality acceptance. First, it is reality testing, and then it is reality acceptance. That I accept that all my desires cannot be satisfied. Reality is standing in the way. So I have to accept the inevitable frustrations of life. There cannot be a man without unfulfilled desires. It is by definition that every man will have some unfulfilled desires. And object permanence independent of us becomes a reality. So we have integrated ourselves. We have realized that there is a world out there which is free from us. Integration has happened, realization has happened. And now a negotiation starts of creating our own identity and fixing the identity of others and of environment around us. This personalization. That we develop a sense of living in one's body, a sense of embodiment, and our own identity. So one, we develop a clear sense of boundary. First, we develop a sense of living in one's body, embodiment. Then we develop a sense of boundary. And then we develop a sense of identity. That this is who I am, and this is what the environment is. A clear identity of the self, a clear identity of the environment, a clear identity of the others. And this brings us into the world of persons. We have now entered the world of persons. That each person has his own identity, autonomy, and desire. And we have our own. So we clearly mark our boundary and we see the boundary of others. So we become persons and we accept others as persons. So this is the phase of personalization. Integration, realization, personalization. And each of these you can see connected to disorders. Realization problems will lead to derealization. Personalization problems will lead to depersonalization. Good enough mother. Very important concept of Winnicott. Winnicott discusses it in some terms, what all comes under the title of a good enough mother. First, he comes to the concept of primary maternal preoccupation. That there is a phase in mother's life when the mother is completely preoccupied with the infant. And there are three important points of it. Some people say this happens a few weeks before the birth and continues for a few weeks after the birth. Some people put 3 months and some people put 9 months or 7 months as this phase. When the complete concern of the mother is the child. And there is an attunement, meaning Without language, the mother understands the needs of the child, and the focus is completely on the child. So this is the primary maternal preoccupation, which is slightly different from maternal reverie that Bion talks about.
I don't remember. But maternal reverie, you said, by Bion?
Yeah, Bion talks about maternal reverie.
Uh-huh. We discussed that in the class. What?
Correct.
Senior moment. I lost it. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. We'll again come to it. Let me just go through it.
Yes, sir.
There is a complete adaptation to the infant's needs. And slowly, as the primary maternal preoccupation recedes, there is a gradual failure of adaptation, which is also very necessary. This will create what is called optimum frustration. And from an ideal mother, you come to the ordinary devoted mother, a good enough mother. So initially it is like the completely good mother, and slowly from there it comes to good enough mother. Slowly, the mother has to facilitate independence of the child. And Mahler calls it secure base, meaning the child first is completely fused with the mother. Slowly, he starts developing autonomy. But what he does is he will play, but keep an eye on the mother and be in the same room. Slowly, he will start going to the next room, but occasionally come back to check if the mother is there. So, this is what Mahler calls a secure base, that the child is checking out if the secure base is still there. That is his only base of safety. And the secure base has to be there, but not intruding into the child, allowing child to play. So be present, but don't intrude. Be present, occasionally guide, but don't intrude. It's very important. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to be with the child and not get involved. And very important is object and love survive exploitation. That the child believes he has a right to exploit the mother. And the mother must survive that exploitation, and the love of the mother also must survive that exploitation. And once this exploitation is complete, automatically guilt happens, reparation happens, and concern starts. So the primary element is exploitation, and the guilt and the concern comes later. But the mother has to allow that exploitation of the child, by the child, sorry, and the love has to survive that exploitation. Just give me a moment. Checking for a diagram, could not find it. कोई बात नहीं. Now, primary maternal preoccupation of Winnicott and maternal reverie of Bion.
Yeah.
So the primary maternal preoccupation has to do with concern, attunement, focus for a period of time. after which it starts receding and optimum frustration sets in, and you become a good enough mother from being an all good mother. So it is a kind of a phase where the mother is attuned to the child and is completely focused on the child. What Bion brings in is during this period, what happens to the child's thinking process and the emotional process. So he says that the mother has to contain the projections of the child, projective identification of the child, or expressions of the child, and allow him to develop the alpha function. So the mother provides containment. So the child puts in something, the mother contains it, processes it, and gives back good things to the child. The child puts in screams, discontent, aggression. The mother gives back the smile. So there is a processing of the input and the output. It's an active containing function. And this state is the state of maternal reverie. Now, Bion's maternal reverie is a kind of a psychological and epistemological stage. And this is not a stage like Winnicott. This is a process which can happen anytime. So it's more like a state rather than a stage. That it need not be in the first few months only. This continues for a long time, where mother acts as a container and is processing the difficult parts of the child and giving it back to the child well processed. Second, looking at the mother's alpha function, the child slowly starts developing his own alpha function to convert difficult feelings into acceptable feelings or to think over them. To convert, in Bion's words, beta material into alpha material. So the maternal reverie is a state which can happen at any time, contrast with primary maternal preoccupation, which is confined to a few months after the birth. And Bion's idea has more to do with containment and development of the alpha function rather than Winnicott's ideas of the infant having a good feeling of safety, security, and love. Winnicott does not go into the epistemological or the containment part of what Bion goes into. So Bion is more epistemological and Winnicott that way is more macro. So there are two different things. That primary maternal preoccupation, what Winnicott defines, at the same time, maternal reverie may happen and is happening, but apart from it, also maternal reverie happens. So in the same period that Winnicott calls primary maternal preoccupation, maternal reverie is also happening, which Winnicott could not find, which Bion found. Because in the same period, 100 things are happening, of which we have identified only 25. And each thinker identifies only 5. Because in the period from 0 to 5, if 100 things are happening, at present we are aware only of 60, 70 things. 30 are yet to be discovered in future. And out of what we have discovered, every thinker has discovered a few things, not the whole of it. Next concept, the capacity for concern. In a normal child, and for Winnicott, every child is a normal child, Winnicott does not seem to believe in constitutional psychopathy, which today many people believe. That antisocial personalities are one of the most difficult to deal with in therapy. And most therapists agree that nobody has found a reliable method to work with antisocial personalities. You may have occasional successes, that's a different thing. Exception proves the rule, and the rule is we have not found a reliable method for antisocial. But Winnicott is far more positive. He doesn't seem to share this present pessimism, and he is very optimistic. So for him, if adequate holding and love and object constancy survive exploitation, then naturally concern arises. Capacity for concern builds in, because just as the mother has shown the concern which has withstood exploitation and attack, the child also develops it seeing the mother. And initially the guilt arises, then reparation arises, concern arises, and first in a two personal situation it happens between the child and the mother, and slowly responsibility towards others develops. From this dyadic thing between the child and the mother, it moves to a social sphere, and in general empathy develops. So this is a very important concept for Winnicott, that the capacity for concern automatically develops after exploitation. You are saying something.
Yes, sir. I was just wondering, remembering Winnicott and his very optimistic, friendly, laughing, smiling kind of picture that you showed in that slide, and having several women caretakers in his childhood. So, uh, is it
True.
so that where there are polygamy is allowed, are the children from the families where there are multiple mothers, do they thrive better? Do they develop better concern and commitment, things like that?
Concern, I think yes,
Uh-huh.
because what you see in environment, part of it
Mm.
always rubs onto you.
Yes.
You can't be immune
Mm.
being years in an environment.
Mm.
So if the somebody is surrounded by femininity, then
Mm.
feminine qualities will develop to some extent, and he will
Mhm.
be able to see the feminine in a far
Mhm.
more realistic way than others.
Mhm.
Like others will have a lot of projections, he will have fewer projections
Mm.
because he has seen too much of the real.
Mm.
So concern, yes. Sensitivity, yes. Less of
Commitment,
brutality, yes.
less of brutality.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it is, yes. But one can then look at other parts. Okay, what about stability, resoluteness, courage, bravery, fortitude,
Mm.
the leadership qualities? That will be difficult. It is like too much development of the yin and too little development of the yang, when in fact he has to go out into the society and perform by and large yang functions. But where more concern is required, I think individuals who are brought up in this way are better suited. So I would say all the healing professions, whether it's a doctor or a therapist or a physiotherapist or nursing or something, if they are brought up in this way, it's probably better. A similar thing came up. Uh, do children of absent fathers thrive better? This had come up when people were analyzing Bill Clinton when he became president, because his father was practically an absent father.
What did you say? People were what? They were what? Doing what to Clinton? Abalizing?
And people were analyzing his profile after he became
Analyzing.
president.
Mhm.
And it came out he had a practically absent father, emotionally absent father. So then the question came up, do children with emotionally or physically absent father thrive better?
Mm.
Because in a way their confidence goes high, because in a way they become men of the house, so to say. So they experience far less castration and far more empowerment too early. They are given on responsibility too early. And in a way, they don't have to bow down to authority. And can this create a more enterprising nature? So it's like a one-way correlation, not a two-way correlation. That many people who are successful, they have absent fathers, but everyone who has an absent father is not successful. And there are many who are successful who have internalized a successful father. So that also works equally well. And in fact, those who are burdened with a successful father, their difficulty knows no end. Because many of my clients are those who are coming from second or third generation of successful families, and they are burdened with the high achievements of the father. And society sees them in a way they can't be their own self. They have to just be a clone of the father and succeed more than him, which is not easy in today's world.
Or
So
be
they are
completely
crushed under
rebel,
a burden.
or become rebel and almost dissocial or anti-system stance, being like a natural.
Correct. Correct. But it's a burden that pulverizes them.
This was an
Because
observation done by a person who was a PhD doctor who was in charge of Vadu, the satellite center of KM Hospital. And he observed that there were several people in the locality who were alcoholics or otherwise incompetent and would harass their wives, and they had accidental deaths, and then their families flourished. So taking away the negative influence allowed them to progress further.
correct, that is very true.
Yes, sir.
It's very true. This happens even in case of personality disorder people.
Mm.
When they're harassing their families and they go away, everyone becomes happy
Mm.
because everyone's progress and happiness is held back by his pathology. I know of a man whose allergy of many food items, which was there with him for 15 years, suddenly vanished with the death of the mother. That man could not eat anything citrus. He would have a severe allergic reaction. So severe that he would have to be given an injection of dexamethasone. And this was regular for him. Okay? Anytime he eats, he has to take an injection. But all the allergies reversed after the mother's death. And after that, for last 10 years, 12 years, he has been eating everything with no difficulty.
Immunity is at cellular level and psychology is true at that level. Yeah, absolutely. Even anaphylaxis were known in one personality and not in the other dissociative personality.
So one of the nodal points of the confluence of mind and body is the immune system.
Mm.
That's one
Mm.
of the nodal points where the two meet and where the
Mm.
exchange happens. It's like a stock exchange,
Mm.
the psychosomatic stock exchange. And that is where the autoimmune difficulties come up.
True.
Antisocial tendency. Now, Winnicott did a lot of work with delinquent children. I think he is one of the therapists who has worked most with teenagers and delinquency. If you ask me of all the people that we are studying, who has worked most with teens, adolescents, and antisocial delinquents, it is Winnicott. Winnicott sees antisocial tendency coming out of deprivation. It is a cry for help. It is a search for the lost good object. They are not finding an object who is good enough, safe, kind, and yet idealistic. An object who is himself idealistic, but who will not criticize and come down heavy upon them, who will tolerate their lack of idealism till they live it out. Their exploitativeness is exhausted and a concern arises in them, and then they want to turn. It is just that we are not able to hold them for long enough. So the antisocial tendency is a search of hope that somebody will come to correct me. But that somebody does not have to be only attacking and moralistic. He has to be somebody kind, somebody good, somebody holding, somebody parent-like, and then who has the patience to withstand all the attacks of this person, and then this person will turn away from antisocial tendencies. Especially stealing and destructiveness, Winnicott felt they were all attention-seeking, object-seeking measures. And this I have found true in some cases. Though we have to limit the reach of Winnicott here and bring in the element of difficult antisocial personalities and difficult psychopathic personalities, where this thing does not work. Or if it was to work, it is impractical to go along this process. So practically it does not work in cases of severe antisocial tendency or psychopathic personalities. But for ordinary antisocial tendencies, this works. Especially antisocial tendency along with addiction. Yes, sir.
Sir, even Neely Myers said that sense of moral agency is required for a chronic psychotic to recover. He should be able to rewrite his autobiography in a positive way where he was moral. And there should be peopled opportunities where people appreciate his positive work. And then only he can come out. Otherwise, it is difficult to recover from chronic psychosis.
Correct. So one is the morality of it, and second is the motivation of it.
Yes.
You put together both of them.
Yes, sir.
When it is something great and something morally very great to come out of psychosis. So there is a moral good and there is greatness involved, which gives a narcissistic high. And the two together become a good motivation to come out of.
Yes.
Because many of them don't have adequate motivation. What we call the will to heal is not strong enough.
Will to
Heal.
heal.
The will to heal is not strong enough. It's like we are trying that he should heal, but he's not interested. So
too much of the struggle.
Yeah. So one of the core things in difficult pathology is that the will to heal has to happen. At some point, initially we may just be doing on our part without asking anything of the patient. But at some point, we have to ask the patient, okay, you have to have that will to heal.
Contribute something to the process.
That if you don't have the will to heal, nobody from outside can do anything. If you have the will to heal, then everyone from outside can act as a multiplier. But zero multiplier when anything is zero.
Zero.
So we have to have some number there, some will to heal, which we can multiply using our knowledge. So we are multipliers, but the will to heal has to come from you. And that, for that, one has to look at one's cost, one's pain, one's suffering, and what benefit one can get if one heals. What can life be and what life is? And that provides a rational foundation. The cost benefit analysis that creates a rational foundation, which is then multiplied by the moral argument and the narcissistic high. And together, they sort of propel the person to manufacture the will to heal.
This is very nice idea. Ideally, this should be written on a slide. If you don't mind, please.
What is saying? Will to heal.
Will to heal multiplied by a rational uh, this thing, something. And yes, narcissistic high.
Yes.
This is almost exalting. When somebody breaks the chain across generations, the abusive mother, abusive father, grandfathers who have committed violence and suicide, and the patient becomes well. It's almost intoxicating.
Yeah, it's actually heroic.
Yes.
In the context of the inner world, it's actually heroic.
Mm.
When you put an end to an intergenerational suffering.
Yes. And there is a seminar, as I believe, I don't remember exactly what do they call that, workshop or seminar in Nimhans from December 4 to 6 by some fellowship trust from Chennai, which speaks about from recovery, from rehab to recovery, from rehab to recovery, 4 to 6 December.
It's very good.
Mhm.
Which place is it?
It is in Nimhans,
Okay.
but the organization is from Chennai. I don't remember right now. Richmond Fellowship. It is by
Oh,
Richmond
yes.
Fellowship. Yeah. And they are inviting symposia and presentations. It may be good to present case series or
Correct.
several cases if you have, then I thought that will be good.
So this is something that we have to use in general also. But antisocial tendency, we just mark the limitation of the extension of his concepts, that in
Absolutely.
severe category it does not go that way, but especially in antisocial, which is mild to moderate, and when coupled with addiction, it works very well. The same works in addiction also. If you just hold the person and not criticize his addiction, and once or twice mention why he is addicted, and just be there, he will keep trying to provoke you by saying, today I did X, today I did Y. But if you just keep containing it, someday it will wear off. The defiance will fall because of the lack of anger.
Yes.
The defiance falls in acceptance. If the defiance falls, then we can talk reason. Because there is huge amount of defiance in many addictions. Two more concepts, the potential space or the intermediate space or the transitional space. You can use the word potential space, intermediate space, or the transitional space. And the capacity to play, playing. These are very, very important to Winnicott. The transitional space, of course, then transitional objects will come. Transitional phenomena will come. So we are entering the transitional world, so to say. Okay, in the context of the psyche, we talk about a transitional world. And in that transitional world, we find transitional space, transitional objects, transitional phenomena. And what do we mean by this? We mean a world where play happens. It is a world of synthesis of the opposites, like reality and fantasy. Two opposite fantasies, two opposite things in reality. It's almost like a Hegelian space of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. What Hegel says, okay, you propose an idea, and the moment you propose, automatically an opposite idea comes up in the mind or in somebody's mind. And then both these ideas have their strengths and weaknesses, do's and don'ts. And slowly, a third idea emerges, which is like an optimum blend of the two. A synthesis happens. So there are thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. It's a very transitional phenomenon in Winnicott's language.
Many times after a lot of time has elapsed, one loses the interest in writing too.
Interest in?
Because interest in writing down, because thesis and antithesis come together, and then one feels what is the point? It's already said by so many people. And
Correct, correct. So what Winnicott says is that there is a potential space, and this potential space has the potential for play. I mean, what is the potential in the space? The potential is for play. For play, it is a potential space where play can happen between inner and outer reality, between two opposites of the inner reality, between two opposites of the outer reality. It is a space where creativity can happen. And this is opposite of concreteness. So in Winnicott's terms, psychosis is nothing but the collapse of play when concreteness is encountered. Not whole of psychosis, but that part of psychosis where concreteness is entrenched. We say concreteness is the cessation of play. It is the collapse of the metaphor. It's a collapse of the symbol formation. That the man can think only concretely, he can no longer think metaphorically. The symbol formation faculty has collapsed. So play has collapsed because play is what takes us to metaphors. Metaphors is a play. That we find something, right, and we symbolize it by something else, and then we add some touch of spice to it. So metaphorization is actually an act of play, usually with a lot of spice built into it. So the potential space is an intermediate area of experience. It's neither reality nor fantasy. There is an intermediate space in between, not on the extremes. It is neither pure fantasy nor pure reality, neither completely anarchic nor completely concrete. It is an in-between space where material from both the ends can come together and get into play. So in a way, a lot of Winnicott's ideas have developed the play therapy of Klein. So Klein was the first to talk of play therapy. And Winnicott actually developed it in many ways. One of the ways was the squiggle game. So Winnicott will squiggle something on the paper, something with a pen, and ask the child to draw further. Then he will draw further and the child will draw further. And through that, he will try to enter the unconscious of the child and provide healing as much as he can, using these ideas, of course. So he developed a lot of play, and one popular was a squiggle game. In today's language, we will call it a projective test or a projective way to heal. The therapeutic space also is, in a sense, a potential space. Okay, we do alchemy between reality and fantasy, between concreteness and fluidity, between the inner and the outer. We work with the dreams and then we come to reality. We work with fantasies and then slowly we come to reality acceptance. So in Winnicott's terms, the therapeutic space is also a potential space. And it has to always encourage play and not go into concreteness, not go into a rigid technique. Because rigid technique means concreteness, the collapse of play. And the potential space is also seen in cultural experience. All of arts, all of performances, they play in the potential space. So the whole world of art, the whole world of mythology and culture is playing in the potential space. So the potential space is not only in the mind of an individual or in the therapy room, it is out there in which society is playing. It is our job to make sure that the therapy room becomes a safe potential space for play to happen. Because without play, healing cannot happen. And of course, by play, we are not meaning something infantile. Our idea of play is a very deep idea of play. So when we talk of the play of fantasy and reality, the play of the outer and the inner, the play between the patient and the therapist is a very deep concept. These are not a child's play. So our play is not really a child's play, but in a way it's a child's play because we're addressing the child inside. But not literally. It's a very deep area that we designate as play.
Various roles are taken and exchanged and further changed.
One of the best uses of these concepts is in psychodrama, where you concretize and metaphorize at the same time. Like if you have a struggle between the id and the ego, they will devise a drama where one person becomes the id and second person becomes the ego. So what is abstract in discussion becomes suddenly concrete and is front of your eyes instead of inside. And there it's very easy to see and analyze for many people. Or you will be asked to play one of the roles. So psychodrama is a very potential tool which uses these elements, that you concretize the metaphor and you metaphorize the concrete. Should we break for a cup of tea?
Yes, sir. Sir, lastly, what is the difference between metaphor and analogy? There is no real similarity, or what is it? Or is it from different? This is a petty
Uh,
question.
the common element between the two is comparison.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
the deployment of the two
Mm-hmm.
is slightly different,
Okay.
because metaphor is deployed in more general communication, but
Mm-hmm.
analogy is usually deployed when you want to explain one similar situation by pointing out to another similar situation. It is like giving an example.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in metaphors, you don't explicitly say, you imply the comparison. But in analogy, the comparison is explicit. But there is one commonality of comparison. Metaphors are more implicit, analogies are more explicit, they are more
Explicit.
specific, and they require a comparable incident to be cited. Whereas in metaphor, you don't require a comparable incident, you imply it.
Yeah.
And you leave the person hearing it to imagine it out.
Other person has a responsibility to decipher what did the other person mean, say actually. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Once I had a title which I did not use. The title of the talk that I was going to give was simile called metaphor.
Uh,
So it's almost like analogies are like very similar to similes.
Taking analogy to the level of metaphor. Yes.
Uh,
Thank you, sir. 10 minutes?
huh. Just trying to, how do you, second element in the potential space is playing. For Winnicott, creativity and play are very important. Winnicott is someone like Jung who is not satisfied with removal of symptoms, but who is interested in general quality of life. So for him, creativity, play, and capacity to be alone, these are very positive markers of health. So first we look at symptom removal, and then we look at creativity, play, and capacity to be alone. So playing, Winnicott explores first in terms of capacity. Is there a capacity to play? A psychological capacity. Second is a social capacity. Does one really play? Or does one live a regimented life out of fear of criticism? It's like I often say, I give this as an exercise. You walk on the road when people are seeing you and look inside what happens. Do you become conscious? Do your legs not go in the straight direction? Do you want to shift attention by turning off your Walkman or something? Or you start looking at the phone? Or you put your hands in the pocket? How do you see? How comfortable are you when you are being looked at? The gaze of the other to use Lacan's words, because that sheds some light on our own being comfortable as we are and the fear of attack of the others. Social attack, of course. So I often say, do nothing, just do this exercise. Walk through a road where others are standing on the by side and make it natural. Then comes shared playing, that you play with someone. He is also in play and you are also in play. It's a group play. Then Winnicott explores this in therapy, therapeutic play, how the play happens in therapy. Then in symbolization, that one of the play that happens in mind is of symbolization. And the most dramatic expression of it is in dreams. Dreams are full of play. And then there is discovery of self. There is a lot of play in spirituality. And some approaches in spirituality are extremely heavy in play. Not the regimented, structured approaches, but the more you approach, less structured approaches, they become more loaded with play. Like if you are doing something like Hatha Yoga, the play will be minimal. But if you are in Bhakti Yoga, the play will be very high. And Winnicott insisted on exploring creativity in the act of play. How can you be creative in play? So let us say we play every day, but we are not creative. We play the same game. We are playing carom, so we play carom the same way. So how to first start play and then bring creativity into play? Then how can we create different games in the carom itself? And this can be used profusely in sand therapy, what they call the sand tray therapy. They put a tray in which you put sand and you put a few toys, and the entire play happens in that tray. And it is a specialized form of child therapy where people are now offering even a post-graduation only in the sand tray play. So there are some institutes from UK who are offering this partly online, partly offline, where you specialize, you start with play therapy in general, and then you specialize in sand tray therapy. So in that sand tray, everything is expressed out by the child. Now, as we said, the potential space actually is a transitional space. So if you look at transitional world, the transitional world will have transitional space, transitional object, and transitional phenomena. So let us look at what is the transitional object. The transitional object is a substitute object, but it is supposed to be a temporary object. Like somebody grasping at the mother's sari, mother's garment, or a towel, or a teddy bear. So the first attempt is to substitute a lost object by the transitional object. It is to substitute a lost object by a transitional object. And it is the first not me possession. In a way, it's the first concrete possession by the child. He shows possessiveness on a thing, not a person, but it is the first thing the child is possessive about. As people say, boys are more interested in things and women are more interested in people. So the thing interest comes here. That the transitional object, in a way, is an attempt to substitute the lost object by something you have. And in a way, it's a sophisticated denial of loss. Some people use the nipple, the bottle nipple, instead of the breast. The bottle becomes substitute of the breast, or a garment of the mother, or a towel, or a teddy bear, or some toy somebody has given. So in a way, it's the way to manage loss, substitute the lost object with the transitional object. It's a first not me possession. It's a comforting object. It's a symbolic representation of something lost. It helps in separation. So the transitional object also is an aid in separation. That from a fused existence with the mother, slowly the child separates, and this separation process is eased by the transitional object. That often the child goes into the other room to play, but takes the transitional object with him. It provides emotional security. It can be a blanket, teddy bear, anything. The difficulty happens when the loss is not normal. The loss is traumatic. Then the transitional object becomes the permanent object. The transitional object, instead of being temporary, it becomes a permanent object. Just as you have a transitional object, you can have a transitional phenomenon. In fact, people develop strange kind of transitional objects across life. A old motorcycle, an old car that everyone says you should let go, you can't let go. Some place where you have been going every evening to have a cup of tea, or your house which has become very old and it's time to change, but you cannot change. So anything that logically has to be let go, but you can't let it go. That means the transitional object in a way has become a permanent object. You can't let it go. And this is what happens in many cases, that, for example, sucking the fingers after the breast is taken away is the transitional thing for the breast. And many children develop this habit of sucking the fingers for a very long time. So most children will be able to overcome it because for them it is transitional. It's a temporary support to overcome loss. But those who cannot, they have actually faced a traumatic loss, not an ordinary loss. So in fact, early life, you can make out that somebody is going to develop a pathology after puberty. That at the age of 8 or 9, if you are not able to give up your transitional objects, then in all probability after puberty, you will develop some pathology. Now, what is a transitional phenomenon? Any imaginative play, any transitional phenomena happening in the mind. Most healing phenomena are transitional phenomena in different ways. Cultural experience of art, creativity, religion, illusion formation, they are all transitional phenomena in different ways. Psychodrama is a very good example where we create a transitional phenomenon. Next concept is of the true and the false self. Very important concept. Winnicott says that if everything is going right, all that we said till now, the facilitating environment, the good enough mothering, the integration, realization, personalization, illusionment and disillusionment, concern, play, creativity. If everything has been going well, then we develop our true self. Meaning, what we are able to spontaneously live it out without fear. We develop a self which is only one and it's coming out naturally. So Winnicott says it is marked by spontaneous gesture. Spontaneity is very important to Winnicott. Do you feel safe enough to be spontaneous? Or you think 3 times before doing anything? Okay, what will people say? What will happen to me? If you think 3 times, then there is no safety. Because one is not able to be spontaneous. To be spontaneous, one has to feel safe. That I will not go wrong or others will not attack me. Without safety, one cannot be spontaneous. So spontaneous gesture is where the inner self acts itself out without fear or holding back. That is where the true self comes out. So Winnicott says, if we can live spontaneously, if we can do authentic self-expression, if we can do creativity without inhibition, if we feel a sense of aliveness, not a dysthymic existence. Most of us have a dysthymic existence. Dysthymia is far more pervasive than we believe. Most of us live in a dysthymic condition. We don't have a sense of aliveness. We don't have a sense of alive curiosity. Our frustrations in a way have numbed us. Personal continuity, that you don't have to change yourself to suit the occasion. You don't have fractures in what you are presenting to the world. And an integrated identity that you don't have to customize to the context. These are the constituents of a true self. And a healthy person is one who can live out his true self, apart from having the capacity to be alone. So to be able to be spontaneous, creative, alive, have an going on being, an integrated identity and feeling safety, not having to adjust and customize to the context all the time. This is the true self. If the environment is not facilitating enough, then we are not able to live out these things. And we go into compliance. We adapt to external demands. We develop a defensive organization. We mask our authenticity. And we develop over the true self a false self. There is a nucleus of the true self, but we develop over it layers of the false self to adjust to the environment. And then the true self is hidden. And there are degrees of false self. What is the thickness of that layer covering the true self? In most of us, it is thin, but in some cases, there is an extreme false self. Most of us have a thin false self. Very few people will really be authentic. So we all live with a weak false self covering the true self. But if the false self becomes too strong, then it is pathology. And the role of therapy here is to undo the false self and bring out the true self. If you ask in one line, what is the goal of Winnicottian therapy? It is to undo the false self and bring out the true self. In the entire Winnicottian scheme of things, nothing is more important than this because everything else get covered in some way by this. Any questions?
I was just wondering if he continued for 12 and 15 years or more in therapy, then what must have been the perceived need for uh, analyzing self and parent and the interaction so that
That is true. That is true.
mm,
The only guess that I can make is कि probably he had some deep problems of uh, true and false self and of integration and personalization
mm,
because these are the only elements which will take so long in his words.
mm.
Rest of the things will not take so long for somebody who is so talented and well read and so sincere about working on himself. So this is
and
the guess
he
that we can make.
and also he started writing very late, no? That was also a point. And then the authenticity. For example, if the environment is not conducive, for example, say in my work environment, I cannot tell my authorities that they are wrong. I have done that several times and then suffered the consequences. But there have been times when authorities had been completely different and they have taken it very well.
Right.
So, how to find out and how is it is not always predictable. So, authenticity, how much can I afford?
Correct.
If
Very right.
I don't have any desire left, I'm going with my resignation letter in my pocket every day. Then perhaps I can be very authentic.
I would qualify even that.
Yeah.
Let us say, for example,
Uh-huh.
he you don't have any personal X to grind anymore. You are done with it. You have earned what you wanted, and even if you leave tomorrow, you don't mind. Let us say, for example, that is a situation. Now, one can put one more question that if you are authentic and you speak the truth, regardless of personal price you are ready to pay, and the organization asks you to go and brings in somebody who is very unethical or half ethical as you were, and then society suffers. So then we are looking at personal authenticity leading to social suffering. So that also is one element apart from personal risk. Okay, what good can you do and what good your departure will damage?
Yeah,
So that also is an element to hold back the horses of authenticity.
completely agree. Partly because it is self-aggrandizing also. But, but I will say that uh, one more element that will not pain as much is there is no salary where I'm working. We are paid a portion of what the patients are charged, and that is meager. And 600 rupees a session or something, out of which I may be getting 400 or so. And I go once a week, and that is all right with me. So money is not the type of patients you see is like a kaleidoscope there. They come from all walks of life. They come from very difficult. I saw a lady who could have been murdered the previous night. Her face was swollen. The son is abnormal. The husband doesn't come, and he has already been to the prison, and they are not going to complain against him. So on one hand, this, and then there are umpteen kinds of kaleidoscope, and if you allow them to speak, then they speak. And uh, the transitional object, you can say, or whatever, that is keeping me still there is a couple of projects that are clinging, and I can't leave that much. Still, moha hai moha, attraction toward that, and
Uh,
attachments are necessary.
Correct. And the the grand concept of it all is what we call Vivek.
Vivek.
कि भाई, in this situation, should I be 100% authentic?
Hmm.
It may not be wise to be authentic always.
No, no. I know
So we
that
have
from
to round off the edges of all ideals.
I know that from within. Yes, sir.
So we have to round off the edges of all ideals in the when we see them in the light of practical reality and the consequences of everything. And that is where the, as we say, the when the theory meets practice,
Yes.
theory undergoes a change.
Hmm.
And that is where the overarching principle always has to be Vivek. What does Vivek say?
Please allow me to send you a couple of articles and a chapter by email. The chapter got revised and I received it today. And a couple of articles are one is in praise of diagnosis, and the other is it shows the flip side of diagnosis. So I would like to present.
Sure, sure.
I think if I have not shared them with you before, I will share them right now.
Please
Yeah.
share.
Thank you, sir. And I'm sharing you the PDF copy, which I'm not sure if I'm supposed to share, but I'm going to share it with you. The PDF copy as it is, as it comes from the book. Yeah. Thank you, sir. It is the author copy.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, just one more thing, and then next time we will do DSM disorders.
Yes.
So next time we will connect all of this. That if something goes wrong in facilitating environment, what happens? Good enough mothering, what happens? That kind. So let us just finish the concepts. Going on being. So one of the important concepts of Winnicott, that the continuity of existence should not be intruded upon. As you are building up your sense of self, your identity, it should not be attacked and you should not be forced to change it. You should have that luxury of going on being. So the intrusion in the early ego development period, identity development period, or living it out period in the early part should not be there. And the psychological continuity should be allowed, because any intrusion actually shatters. It's like something is coming together to make us fear, and you put something in, again it shatters. So going on being is very important. In the therapy, you don't speak anything and allow the person to just be himself. And many therapists find it very difficult. How not to do anything? It's not easy because you become anxious. So allowing the person to be himself, and we do many times mistake by one starting the session. We give direction to the session by saying, what about this? What happened last time? Last time you were saying this. So never start the session. Just allow the patient to be and let his unconscious start the session. Never say anything beyond hello, good morning. Just allow him to sit and start the session. If your early time of therapy, early period of therapy, you can just say, feel free to say whatever you feel like. Because he may feel diffident in a new environment, but after a few sessions, it becomes natural. But initially, you may just say something like this, but never start meaningfully the session. Let his unconscious start. Let him experience the going on being. So intrusion is what creates irritation and disintegration. When something structural is being formed, intrusion creates disintegration. Something fragile, structurally, it creates disintegration. And in process terms, in affect terms, it creates irritation. Later on, anger. The last important concept of Winnicott is, going on being does not mean abandonment. It does not mean unconcern. You are present, you are concerned, you are interested, but you are not intruding. That is what people find it difficult. How can you have interest without intruding? So you have to separate the two. Have concern and interest, be emotionally present, physically present, but not intrude. Hold yourself back. Let him have the luxury of going on being without intrusion. Last important concept is capacity to be alone. Of course, this can happen only when after you have internalized good objects. But Winnicott does not go in that lexicon. He says the presence of a reliable other is internalized. The holding of early life is internalized. And that can lead to emotional independence, where you have solitude without loneliness. You are alone but not lonely. You are alone and happy. You don't have the anxiety of loneliness. You don't have the depression of loneliness. Usually, if good objects have not been internalized enough, if early life holding has not been internalized enough, then loneliness brings anxiety and depression. And there is a desperation to reach out to people, no matter how costly that reaching out is. And often people pay a heavy price for avoiding loneliness. They enter into difficult relationships. They choose between bad and worse.
Yes.
So the capacity to be alone is very important. And this calls for very strong ego integration and very strong internalization of good objects. Like when we look at those who take sannyas in India, first they live in ashram, and only later they go to live alone in the mountains in the gufa cave. Initially, although they have given up the world, they still live in the monastery. They are still surrounded by human objects. And only after deep self-change, self-transformation, they go to live alone in the cave. So from the world to the ashram, from the ashram to the cave. So the capacity to be alone, and this calls for one, internalization of good objects, internalization of good holding, and lot of satisfaction in the world, and a genuine interest in something. If not in anything, then meditation and spirituality. It's only later that one can be just alone, doing nothing, and still feel blissful. So capacity to be alone in Winnicott's terms is also infused not only with solitude, not only with happiness, but also with creativity, playfulness, and bliss. Winnicott was the first one to bring in this word bliss in Western psychotherapy. It's a classical Indian word, ananda, bliss. So Winnicott brought this, that the capacity to be alone means, one, you don't feel lonely, you don't feel anxious, you don't feel depressed, you feel positive, you feel happy, you feel playful, creative, and you feel blissful. So the capacity for bliss also is a very important capacity for Winnicott. The capacity for bliss. And bliss is different from ordinary pleasures. It's a causeless pleasure. It does not need an event or an object. It's a causeless. So this causeless happiness that you call bliss, the capacity to have bliss is also an important capacity for Winnicott. And the capacity to be alone also includes the capacity to be blissful when alone. So this is a very important concept of Winnicott. capacity to be alone, and it includes capacity to be happy, blissful, creative, playful, and not feel lonely and depressed when alone. Not feel lonely when alone, and look at solitude as something positive and pleasant, not as something that has fallen on somebody out of misfortune, but something positive to be sought. It has to be an object of desire, not a compulsion to be managed. Because it has fallen on your head, you have to manage it, not that time. But it is something to be positively sought. It has to be one of the very valuable objects of desire, the capacity to be alone. And the blissful time you spend being alone, that is something to be, you should be looking forward to it. You should be intensely seeking it. It's not a question of managing the problem. It's a question of something that you positively look forward to as a cherishable goal. Being alone, being creative while alone, being playful, being blissful. So being alone and being blissful alone is something that you look forward to as a very valuable object of desire. So, any questions on this? So let us stop for the day, and next time we will complete Winnicott by taking a look at the DSM disorders, connecting them to Winnicott's concepts, and then look at how therapy will be in the light of Winnicott's concepts, and how the theory has evolved today after Winnicott has left.
Thank you, sir.